Carole Middleton's shocking decision that made Queen Camilla cried. Just like to say that Carole and I are totally happy about today's news. Well, I'm not sure what I can do to help. But what all these brave women tell me is that you have to see it to believe it. In the royal world, where every move is planned and every word is chosen carefully, nobody saw this coming. Especially not Queen Camilla. Carole Middleton is Princess Kate's mom, and people used to think she was quiet when it came to royal stuff. Let's talk about Princess Kate's mom. People also call her Super Granny, and Carole Middleton is in this week's People magazine. She made a big and very personal choice that's shocking everyone at the palace. People who know what's happening say Queen Camilla was completely surprised, and even cried because of what happened behind closed doors. What could Carole have possibly done to make the Queen so upset? Let's find out. Carole Middleton and Queen Camilla behind palace doors before the big celebration of Prince William and Kate Middleton's royal wedding in April 2011. It was Prince William and Catherine Middleton's big day. April 29, 2011. Everything seemed fine between their families. Carole Middleton and Camilla, who was the Duchess of Cornwall back then, smiled nicely in public, said hello to each other, and took family photos together. But behind the scenes, problems had already started to build up. They were small, and nobody talked about them, but you couldn't ignore them. Carole Middleton used to be a flight attendant. Her dad was a builder, and her mom worked in retail. Carole went straight to work after school, first at a store called John Lewis and later as a flight attendant. She had worked really hard to build a good life. With her husband Michael, she started Party Pieces, a successful business that sells party supplies. This helped them send their 3 kids to some of the best schools in the UK. She was proud of the life they had made through hard work. Not because they were born into money, but inside Buckingham Palace, old traditions were very important, and not everyone liked her middle-class background, or the fact that she was becoming more important. As Kate and William's relationship got more serious, Carole started noticing small but mean changes in how people treated her at royal events. While some people were nice to her, others seemed to ignore her on purpose, giving her cold looks and unfriendly glances. She would later say, it felt like she wasn't even there, and people didn't need to say anything for her to get the message. This was very different from Camilla, who was born into the upper class and fit right into the royal world. She understood all the unwritten rules about rank and who was more important than who. People say she often talked privately about how important it was to have the right family background and to know your place. The problems got worse during the time before the royal wedding. Carole hoped to add some personal touches to the big event. She wanted small, meaningful things from the Middleton side that would show their family's warmth and closeness. But many of her ideas were pushed aside without much discussion. Decisions about simple things like flowers or who to invite were taken away from her, making it clear that her job was just to smile, nod, and stay in the background. After the wedding, those problems didn't go away. They got quieter, but stronger. Carole started to notice that she couldn't see Kate as much as before. Even though Kate continued to do her royal duties with grace and looked good in public, Kate Middleton is doing more royal duties. The future Queen has gone back to her royal work. Carole could see it was wearing Kate down. Visits became less frequent. Private time together was often stopped or changed to another time. Christmas, which used to be a special family tradition, became a problem because royal rules said Kate and William had to spend the holidays at Sandringham with the royal family. This was a hard change, not just for Carole, but for Kate. Kate was now trying to fit into 2 very different worlds. The strict, demanding world of the monarchy and the warm, down-to-earth love of her family. Trying to keep both sides happy was making her tired. Then Prince George was born in July 2013. As a loving mother and someone who had raised kids before, Carole naturally wanted to be very involved. But the palace had other plans. Royal nannies were chosen and strict schedules were put in place, leaving little room for Carole to be the hands-on grandmother she wanted to be. Some people believed Queen Camilla quietly supported these rules to keep the Middleton family from having too much influence. By the time Princess Charlotte was baptized in July 2015, at the Church of St. Mary Magdalene in Sandringham, Britain's newest royal officially has a name. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana of Cambridge was baptized on Sunday. The problems had gotten bigger. Carole had planned a small private party after the official ceremony, something personal and meaningful. But at the last minute, her plans were reportedly stopped by Camilla's office, causing confusion and disappointment. What was supposed to be a sweet family moment turned into another reminder that her role in Royal affairs was carefully controlled. And so, underneath all the royal smiles and fancy appearances, a quiet competition was happening. One built not on public scandal, but on years of quiet rejection, unspoken judgments, and a fight for space in Kate's increasingly royal life. But what did Carole do to make Camilla so upset? And could this moment really shake up the royal family? Keep watching. The silent message that shocked the royals. The drama at Princess Charlotte's 2015 baptism had barely ended when Carole Middleton's quiet withdrawal started to take shape. What had once seemed like a gentle effort to keep peace between two very different families, the self-made Middletons and the traditional royals, was now being replaced with something much more planned. Carole, after putting up with years of being politely pushed aside and left out, made a decision that would over time change the very foundation of her family's relationship with the palace. Even though she stayed calm in public, Carole began to distance herself from royal life in ways that were both graceful and carefully planned. People inside the palace started to notice she wasn't at events where she used to stand proudly next to her daughter. Her decision, while quiet, carried the weight of rebellion. It wasn't about fighting back. It was about taking back space in a world that had for too long treated her like an unwelcome visitor. The years leading up to this decision had been exhausting. From 2011, the year Kate married Prince William, Carole had been trying to fit into a world that wasn't just unfamiliar, but unwelcoming. Royal traditions clashed with her own grounded, modern family values. And while she had never wanted to be in the spotlight, her presence became a quiet threat to the traditional order. A reminder that influence could be earned, not just inherited. By 2013, with Prince George's birth, this quiet clash had gotten sharper. Carole's hope of being a hands-on grandmother was crushed by the rigid rules around the royal nursery. Royal nannies were more important, and Carole's offers to help were often brushed aside. Planning visits became complicated negotiations, and her efforts to keep things normal for her daughter and grandchildren were constantly met with resistance. This wasn't just about social class. It was about control. Queen Camilla herself, once an outsider, seemed to have embraced the very establishment that had once rejected her. Once known as the other woman, Camilla is now the queen. Over the years, she reportedly became a strong voice for keeping traditions, encouraging strict following of royal customs, and in doing so, according to royal watchers, she positioned herself as quietly opposing Carole's influence. The result was an unspoken competition between the two women. Both mothers, both fiercely protective, but from very different worlds. The tension reached new heights around Prince Charles's 70th birthday in November 2018. Prince Charles is celebrating his 70th birthday today, held at Buckingham Palace. The event brought together the huge royal family and their extended networks. The Middletons, as always, kept their dignity. But the mood of the evening reportedly changed when Carole overheard a conversation between Camilla and a group of her longtime upper-class friends. As they chatted about the changing face of Britain's elite, Camilla is said to have made a pointed comment about new money and the importance of family heritage over financial success. While no names were mentioned, the hint was clear to those who understood the family dynamics at play. To Carole, it felt like a final sharp reminder that no matter how hard she had worked, how carefully she had raised her daughter, or how gracefully she had handled royal expectations, she would always be considered an outsider. For Carole, that moment wasn't just embarrassing, it was eye-opening. What followed was not an outburst or public scene, but a quiet change. She pulled back from royal appearances and stopped trying to include herself in traditions where her presence was no longer welcomed. She stopped asking for invitations, stopped offering suggestions that would definitely be ignored. Instead, she focused on her own world, her business, her community, and most importantly, her family, in the way she could still reach them. Behind closed doors, however, Carole was angry. According to several well-placed sources, she began keeping detailed notes of every interaction that reinforced her being pushed aside. Every time a visit with her grandchildren was cancelled. Every time a family plan was changed without asking her. Every time she was quietly left out of an important moment in her grandchildren's lives. More interestingly, through her wide network of business and social contacts, built during decades of business success, Carole began to learn things. Not gossip, but details. Financial decisions, property management choices, strange patterns of spending, things that, while not necessarily scandalous on their own, painted a bigger picture of how influence and access were used within the palace. Some of these discoveries were minor, expensive purchases justified under ceremonial needs. sudden changes in charity distributions, or overlapping interests between personal luxury and royal obligations. But in the hands of someone as careful and organized as Carole Middleton, these bits of information became powerful. By early 2024, the quiet friction that had long existed between the Queen and Carole Middleton was becoming visible to the public eye. In March of that year, at Prince Louis's school concert in London, royal watchers couldn't help but notice the atmosphere. Carole and Camilla, once photographed side by side, stood at opposite ends of the room. Not a glance, not a smile, not even the polite exchange of greetings. Prince William, always the peacemaker, was seen moving between the two women to ease the obvious tension. But the distance between them was unmistakable. This event wasn't just one incident, that it was the result of years of silent battles, unspoken judgments, and calculated distance. And yet, through it all, Carole had stayed composed. She had never spoken publicly, never allowed herself to become a headline. She had taught her children the value of self-control and respect, and she had followed those lessons herself. Still, the emotional weight of her experiences was undeniable. Watching other royal grandparents, like Camilla's own grandchildren, be warmly included, while she struggled to get time with her daughter's children, was a painful contrast. Despite Kate's best efforts to create balance, the pressures of duty continued to chip away at the bonds that once made her family feel whole. Since becoming a member of the royal family in 2011, the Duchess of Cambridge has become the patron of charities and organizations close to her heart. And while Carole never voiced her frustration publicly, her actions spoke volumes. Her slow withdrawal from palace life was not a retreat. It was a quiet protest, a refusal to be treated as anything less than an equal partner in the lives of her grandchildren. A stand not for status, but for respect. As 2024 went on, palace insiders noted an increasing coldness in the Queen's behavior toward Carole. Royal staff, who once coordinated Middleton family logistics with grace and warmth, became more tight. Invitations were fewer. Interactions were more formal. Even Kate, who had long navigated the two worlds with remarkable poise, appeared increasingly torn, pulled between her royal role and the growing isolation of her own family. Behind the scenes, Carole's efforts continued, not to get back at anyone, but to document every slight, every change, every quiet move that revealed more about how the palace used its power behind polished appearances. It wasn't just about personal pain anymore. For Carole, it was about something deeper, about legacy, about making sure that her family's story would not be written only by palace insiders. She had raised her daughter to be strong, caring, and poised under pressure. And now, as Kate stood at the heart of a monarchy, constantly changing, Carole was determined that the values she had taught wouldn't be erased by titles or tradition. But what did Carole discover that left Queen Camilla in deep tears? And who else is involved in this? Keep watching to find out. The briefcase that broke the silence. Underneath the polished surface of palace protocol and carefully staged smiles, something deeper has begun to stir. What started as a mother's quiet concern now threatens to upset the delicate hierarchy inside Buckingham Palace. And at the center of it all, Carole Middleton. For over a decade, she's been the elegant in-law, the party planner, the picture of discretion. But on a cold morning, February 6, 2025, Carole arrived at Buckingham Palace with no press, no assistants, and a briefcase in hand. What followed, insiders say, wasn't a friendly chat. It was a confrontation. Sources close to the palace claim Carole's visit wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Inside that leather briefcase were documents, real ones, financial records, timelines, names. There's been no official word on what was inside, but whispers have swirled around secret meetings in Switzerland, bank transfers sent through fake companies, and a slow but deliberate effort to push the Middletons out of the royal inner circle. What Carole brought forward wasn't simply about money. It was about influence. Over the past few years, small changes had taken place. Missed invitations, family moments quietly excluded, royal roles reassigned with no explanation. Looked at separately, they seemed like nothing. But together, Carole saw a pattern, and she wasn't going to let it continue unchecked. And the person, allegedly behind this shift, Queen Camilla. Those present at the meeting say Camilla's reaction was unusual. The Queen Consort Queen Elizabeth says she wants Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, to be known as Queen Consort. Usually composed, reportedly left the room visibly shaken. One insider even claimed she was seen in tears after reviewing part of the material Carole presented. The implication wasn't just financial, it was personal. A reminder that Carole, long underestimated, had been quietly watching and documenting everything. Within hours of Carole's visit, things inside the palace changed. Meetings were rescheduled. Senior assistants, some long retired, were called back. Royal engagements were postponed without explanation. The palace issued no statement, but the silence only fueled speculation. Camilla disappeared from public view for 10 days. When she finally returned on March 11th for Commonwealth Day, her usual confidence was replaced with something quieter. Language experts pointed to a more withdrawn presence, fewer staff, briefer interactions. The Queen Consort had not been publicly shaken in this way before. Meanwhile, the staff inside the palace seemed divided. Those close to Catherine reportedly viewed Carole's actions with sympathy. Others, especially traditionalists loyal to Camilla, saw it as disruptive. But the mood had clearly shifted. There was caution in the halls of Buckingham Palace now. Whispers instead of conversations, glances instead of greetings. Even Prince William, known for his steady composure, seemed caught in the middle. Insiders say he began consulting advisors who once worked with his mother, Princess Diana. The symbolism wasn't lost. Diana had once faced her own battles behind the palace walls. Now, royal watchers wondered, was this Kate's Diana moment? The media picked up the scent. Why had royal appearances suddenly gone quiet? Why were there uncharacteristic gaps in schedules? Even businesses with royal warrants were said to be reviewing their connections. Nothing concrete had been proven, but the timing was too sharp to ignore. Carole Middleton made no public comment. She returned home without speaking to reporters, without posting anything online, but her silence spoke volumes. She didn't need to raise her voice. She had already made her point. For the first time in a long time, the palace felt unsettled. Not crumbling, just uncertain. And that uncertainty, in a family built on control, might be the most dangerous shift of all. No one knows exactly what Carole plans next. But those watching closely understand one thing. She didn't just walk into Buckingham Palace that morning to raise concerns. She walked in to remind the monarchy that she was not just the mother of the future queen. She was a force of her own. And if the tearful exit of Queen Camilla is anything to go by, the message was received. Something else was quietly taking shape behind the scenes. A reckoning was coming. And this time, it wouldn't be contained to hushed corridors or buried beneath royal smiles. Now all eyes turned to what happened next behind closed doors after Carole Middleton walked out. A crown without noise. If Carole Middleton's visit signaled the start of a reckoning within the palace walls, her daughter Catherine is now the quiet force guiding where it all leads. What began as whispers of division following Carole's unannounced February 6th meeting at Buckingham Palace has grown into something more undeniable. A visible strategic shift in presence and power, and at the heart of that shift stands Kate. From the beginning, Catherine Middleton was never expected to fit in nicely. When she married Prince William in 2011, her arrival into royal life was met with polite smiles and private looking down on her. The upper class, with its centuries-old hierarchies and inherited status, saw her background as a novelty, even a threat. Her parents' successful party supply company Party Pieces may have been a modern success story. But to some behind palace doors it was little more than a reminder that she was, in their eyes, still common. But Kate never pushed back. She didn't need to dot over the years. She mastered palace protocols with the same quiet determination that had earned her a history degree at the University of St. Andrews. While raising Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, she studied the ways of the royal family, especially the Queen's brand of silent power. She learned when to speak, how to act, and perhaps most importantly, when not to react. By the time March arrived in 2025, as Camilla quietly withdrew from public appearances following the fallout of Carole's visit, Kate stepped forward, but not with rebellion or drama. She didn't grab the spotlight. She simply took up the space that had quietly opened up. Her engagements increased. Her voice began to carry more weight in planning meetings. And most notably, her office was moved. Moved from a tucked-away corner of the palace to a suite just steps from King Charles's working rooms. In palace terms, this was more than symbolic. It was structural. Influence in the monarchy is often measured in feet, not words. Behind the scenes, William was said to rely more heavily on her insight. Palace assistants observed a visible unity between the two, their public outings now more polished, more strategic, more equal. William deferred to Kate on several key decisions in the spring. She in turn offered a perspective that bridged tradition with the world. outside the palace gates. Even Kate's wardrobe played a role in this transformation. She began recycling old outfits, mixing high-street brands with designer clothes. It was subtle but intentional, a royal message of relatability during a cost-of-living crisis. Social media accounts under her influence shifted to stiff announcements gave way to softer moments. Candid photos of the children, behind-the-scenes glimpses, laughter between engagements. The royal image was being reshaped, not with rebellion but with empathy. And now, in April 2025, the question isn't whether the Middletons belong, it's how far their influence will reach. Because power in the palace doesn't vanish. It simply moves. And right now, it's moving in their direction. But what do you think? Has Kate Middleton quietly become the true power behind the palace walls? While no one was watching, we'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.